Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. Today I have a pretty fun video prepared which will consist on comparing two different alternatives when it comes to traveling to see which is the cheapest one. On the one hand, we will have the option of buying a camper, such as for instance the Volkswagen California, in which you can sleep inside for free. And on the other hand, we will have the option of buying a small car, in this case it will be a Toyota Aygo, and then sleeping in hotels when you go out and traveling. The idea is to see which one of these two options ends up being the cheapest one, because often I feel like people think that getting a camper is the cheapest option because you sleep inside and you don't have to pay anything, but they forget about the fact that having a camper is a very big initial investment. In any case, let's leave all the talking aside, my thoughts, your thoughts that you might have, and let's actually go to the analysis and the numbers that will actually tell us which of the two options is the cheapest one. Before we start, I think that it is important to mention the different conditions that I have set for this example and the reasoning behind them. I will compare both options considering that we are a couple traveling, that we do 20,000 kilometers with either one of the transports, that we sleep out of our home for 52 nights per year, and that we do this for a time span of 15 years. In case you're wondering why have I used 52 nights per year, this has been because in a year there are 52 weekends, and I'm assuming that you go out every single weekend. Most probably this will not be the case, but then if you go 1 week on holidays, this might make up for it. But with that said, and after you have hit that like button, let's begin. Starting with having a camper, so in this case the Volkswagen California, its price if we wanted to buy it new would be roughly 49,000 euros, assuming that we buy the cheapest model. Considering that the consumption of the van is roughly 7 liters of diesel every 100 kilometers, that we do, as we said before, 20,000 kilometers per year, and that the price of the diesel stands at 1.1 euros per liter, this would mean that we would spend 1,540 euros a year to drive the camper. In terms of cost of sleeping, it would be 0 euros since we would just be sleeping inside the camper. Also, I have added an additional point, which is the extra amount that you need to pay in maintenance, insurances and taxes of having a camper versus having a small car, because usually everything is a bit more expensive and the tires are more expensive, as I said, the insurance, the taxes and so on. For that, I have set 600 euros extra a year when having a camper versus a small car. Finally, if we do all these costs mentioned throughout 15 years, we see that having a camper and traveling with it would cost us 81,100 euros. This really sounds like a lot, but also bear in mind that these are not even all the costs, because we didn't include all the reparations and everything. These are just the costs that are relevant for this comparison. Now let's look at the second option, which includes having a small car and going to relatively cheap hotels. The price of buying a Toyota Aygo, according to the official website, would be around 13,500 euros. Considering that the consumption of the car is roughly 5 liters of gasoline every 100 kilometers, that, as we said at the beginning, we are expecting to do 20,000 kilometers per year, and that the price of the gasoline is roughly 1.25 euro per liter, this would mean that we would spend at the end of the year 1,250 euros to be able to drive the car. In the point of cost of sleeping, in this case, I have set for the 52 nights a year an average price for the hotels of 80 euros per night. And this is kind of like the average because the prices vary across different seasons, and probably you could get even cheaper ones, but I think that this is a pretty good representation. Counting this, it amounts to 4,160 euros per year in cost of accommodation, and if we add all of these costs up for the 15 years, it amounts to 94,650 euros. So comparing both, we see that the cheapest option would be to get a camper, since the total cost throughout the 15 years would be of 81,100 euros, while the car plus hotel option would cost us 94,650 euros. This represents a difference of 13,550 euros, which if we divide over these 15 years, it comes up to an extra amount paid of 903 euros and 33 cents every single year. Maybe for some of you watching, this might be a small enough difference for you to say, okay, I'd much rather have a small car but sleep in a hotel much comfortably and so on. But again, this is just your choice. And now it's that moment in which I feel that we should stop here for a second and add some very important comments and points that go beyond the numbers and that are super important when considering making the decision of buying a camper or buying a car and then just considering going to hotels. The first point is that I have assumed a time span of 15 years, but of course if the camper lasts for more than 15 years, then it would be much more economical to have a camper. In fact, the break-even point in which the camper becomes more economical than getting a car and going to hotels is after 10.86 years. But this number actually gives a lot of room for thinking, in my opinion, which is that in order to recover the initial investment of having a camper, you need to sleep for 52 nights every single year for almost 11 years in a row. But what happens if in 5 years you have kids? Will you then also be using the camper for 52 nights a year? Or will you then decide and just go to regular hotels? But leaving that aside, do you really think that you will go out 52 nights a year? Because I think that these are a lot of nights. What happens if during these 15 years you travel to other countries in which you cannot get there by camper, but you only get there by plane, such as for instance from here Europe to Canada or to Asia? Then I'm sure that during those years you would not be sleeping for 52 nights in the camper. Also, and the most important point in my opinion, is that we need to consider the increase in regulations when it comes to campers and camping cars, because now it's harder and harder to find free spaces to park with your camper and sleep there, because you are almost banned from everywhere. And if you cannot sleep in public spaces, then this would mean that you would have to go to a campsite and pay like 20 euros to just be able to sleep there, and this would certainly increase the costs of having a camper and being able to use it. These are just some considerations, but as somebody like me who has been traveling with a camping car since I was born with the camping car of my parents, my biggest concern would be the outlook when it comes to regulations with camping cars, since every year it's getting harder and harder, as I said, to find free spaces to park. And yes, it is true they are leaving some parkings for camping cars, but they are not for free. You usually have to pay something like 5 euros, 10 euros, but they are making you pay something. And that's not it, because now we have set the example of getting a car and going to hotels. But what if you get a car and you go to campsites with your tent? The cost of the campsites would be around 20 euros per night, and this would reduce the cost that we mentioned throughout 15 years to 47,850 euros. And this would be much less than the cost of having a camper, which we said that was of 81,100 euros per year. Again, this might not be suitable for the whole year, but it can also be a good saving tip. And now that I exposed all the downsides of the camper and I proposed some different alternatives in order to spend less with the car, I feel that I also should share one of the camper, which is that actually we had a look at one of the most expensive campers out there, which is the Volkswagen California, also I think the most popular one. But we could also have the option in which we buy just a regular van and we camperize it ourselves, like my father did, and I actually did a video on it, and I will leave it here above for you in case you're interested. But this is also an option, and it would drastically reduce the cost of you having a camper. So in the end, we see that it is not black or white, and that there are a variety of factors that would come into play when making this important decision between getting a camper or a small car and then going to hotels. So what is my conclusion with everything that I have mentioned? Well, I love campers and camping cars, and I love the freedom that they bring in the sense that you can just theoretically park anywhere you want. But I think that this freedom is being taken away by the increase in regulations. So if I now had to make the decision, besides the fact that I don't have the money to buy a camper, I would certainly go for a small car, mainly for the topic of regulations, and at least here in Europe. Having a smaller car, it's not just a much smaller initial cost, but it also allows you to go to many different places, and it gives you a lot of flexibility in the sense that you can go out, you can decide to sleep in a tent or in a hotel, and you don't have kind of like the pressure of having to sleep like for the 52 nights a year that we set of the camper in order for it to be more economical than going with the car and just a hotel or a campsite. In any case, this is the end of the video and the comparison, and I just hope that it helps you make a wiser decision when it comes to choosing between these two options. Anyways, thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, then please make sure to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, and as always, see you next time.